Hello, I'm Simon Bowen from OpenLab in the UK, presenting this paper on behalf of my co-authors listed here. Our paper discusses the practical insights from attempting to do experience-centred co-design at scale in the Metro Futures project. So most participative design activities that we're familiar with in HCI and design are at the smaller scales of workshops with single institutions. In Metro Futures, OpenLab had the opportunity to explore how design tactics like designing for and with experience and design participation translate to larger regional scale. The Tyne and Wear Metro is the busiest light rail network outside London in the UK, with around 36 million journeys per year on the network. It's had the same trains running since its 1980 launch, and these trains are now in need of replacement, having reached the end of their intended 40-year working life. In 2016, Nexus, who run Metro, were applying to the Department for Transport for funds to replace the fleet. Metro Futures was the North East region-wide public consultation to support this application and generate the specification for the train manufacturers bidding for the work. The Metro Futures consultation had three strands. Firstly, Nexus administered a questionnaire both in paper forms and online. They also employed Transport Focus, the passenger watchdog, to undertake some interviews and focus groups with passengers. And then thirdly, the OpenLab strand of the work, which we designed in discussion with them to complement these first two parts in three ways. Firstly, it had a more open scope rather than the specific list of topics for consideration that the Nexus and Transport Focus strands had. Secondly, it would go beyond passengers' concerns with existing trains to explore future possibilities for new trains. And thirdly, it would use digital technology, digital media and creative activities developed by the lab to undertake this public consultation. So when we were working out how we were going to undertake experience-centred co-design in Metro Futures, we started with some familiar principles from design and HCI and translated those into a series of commitments that we would use in devising our activities. Firstly, the idea of designing for experience, to understand the quality of the experience so we can improve it. So we did this through focusing on and starting with passengers' actual experiences of using the Metro system. Secondly, understanding co-design as a process of mutual learning, we made sure that the sense-making and decision-making activities throughout the process would be collaborative with our public participants. And then thirdly, seeing public participants as being beyond consultants, also being generators and explorers of design ideas, we wanted to make sure the process moved from discussion of concerns to developing and exploring design ideas. So the question was then, how could we use these principles and how could we extend them at scale? And the paper describes our practical lessons learned in doing so. So the OpenLab strand of Metro Futures largely took place in November 2016, just after the Nexus and Transport Focus strands. It wouldn't have been practical to run design workshops at the scale of the whole North East region. So we came up with an approach where we would have a core group of around 20 public participants, who we referred to as our co-researchers, who would take part in a series of 4 design workshops, quite a familiar co-design process. And we recruited those people to represent people from across the region. This design workshop activity then informed and was informed by interactions with larger groups of people across the region via a series of 8 pop-up labs. These were drop-in sessions in busy public locations like shopping malls, and via interactions on a bespoke website for the Metro Futures project. In parallel with this, we came up with a schools activity that stimulated more future-focused exploratory discussions in the co-researcher workshops and at pop-up labs and on the website. And we used the variety of digital media and tools and activities devised by OpenLab throughout this process. So the details of our design process and its findings for the public consultation are described in the paper. So here, I just wanted to give a few examples to illustrate how we applied the experience-centred co-design principles noted earlier. Firstly, in terms of focusing on and starting with experience. After the first workshop, we asked our co-researchers to go away and record their Metro journeys using their mobile phones, either using the native camera app on the mobile phone or using the bootlegger app, which we gave them some basic training in. We used 9 deliberately open prompts to stimulate the recordings that they would undertake. And these were designed such that they would reveal positive and negative aspects, but also get them to explore what it felt like to travel on the metro. And you can see some of the prompts here and in the paper. We had 77 video clips recorded in total. And it's perhaps unsurprising that the largest number related to something they would like to change. However, we were successful in getting people to record aspects of their journeys that illustrated other experiences, such as the claustrophobia felt when the trains were busy, how enjoyable it was to sit and look at the view from the front-facing windows of the train, the difficulties and frustrations of understanding driver announcements, and the temperature and the climate on trains. In the second workshop, we asked co-researchers to talk about and share their journey recordings to start to make sense of them in a more collaborative manner. With the research team, they came up with a set of keywords to characterise those recordings, and then went through that list and refined it and added weightings or ratings to each keyword, and in so doing were able to identify what their main concerns were, both positive and negative, about the existing metro trains. The nexus and transport focus parts of the consultation followed an approach of offering predetermined options for train features to members of the public that took part. We wanted to do it slightly differently. We wanted to use the experiences that co-researchers and other members of the public have shared to stimulate thinking about new design ideas, about new possibilities, new design proposals for the trains. To further stimulate this work, we ran a schools activity where we asked local school children to imagine the metro in 2036 and then make TV advertisements about those journeys, which were played at the start of the third workshop. And in the third workshop, we asked co-researchers to come up with some ideas that responded to the concerns they'd previously identified. That had some success, but some of those ideas were rather simplistic or direct fixes to those problems, rather than perhaps exploring a broader space of possibilities. So, in the fourth workshop, we came up with some speculative design proposals that we wanted to prompt and stimulate some deeper discussion of the ramifications of those ideas. So, for example, one of the ideas we came up with was about using closed-circuit television, security cameras to monitor antisocial behaviour and crowdsource the process of identifying antisocial behaviour on trains. And the discussion that followed that was very interesting about the use of security cameras, but also about how having this crowdsourced group of people watching CCTV footage could actually encourage some people to show off, to play up to the cameras, to play the fame game, as one of our co-researchers called it. It wasn't practical to do journey recordings at pop-up labs, but we still wanted to be able to capture people's experiences of using the metro and to get their ideas for new metro trains. The Jigs audio tool that was developed by a colleague at the lab was very useful at pop-up labs in this respect. Visitors were invited to draw or write on puzzle pieces that, when joined together, made a picture of a train, and then to take their puzzle piece and go over to a separate unit and audio record an explanation of what they'd written or drawn. And that time to write or draw on the puzzle piece was useful in terms of providing that pause for reflection. It was also useful to have puzzle pieces that previous visitors had drawn on available to subsequent visitors, who could then add to them and make their own responses. And those responses prompted concerns which went beyond Nexus's original list of topics, including ideas such as classical music and softer lighting on trains, for example. We then had to try and move discussions of these concerns and design proposals which we'd had within the co-researcher workshops, enable those to happen at the pop-up labs and on the website. We found in the early pop-up labs that we were starting to hear the same concerns over and over again. So there was a danger that all we would do in the pop-up labs was to reinforce findings that we were hearing from the co-researcher workshops. So what we did, working with the co-researchers, was to take their concerns and ideas, use the keywording activity, and come up with 2 sets of 9 headline videos which illustrated, using some of the co-researchers' recordings, their main concerns and their ideas and design proposals for the new trains. And we showed those on tablet computers at Pop-Up Labs and asked visitors to Pop-Up Labs to either agree or disagree with what they'd seen and to leave a comment. So this was useful because it went beyond that reinforcing of ideas and encouraged a deeper discussion, encouraged critiques and reflections on the concerns and the design ideas that have been shared. And we put those recordings and we put those comments and those ratings on the website so that conversation about the concerns and the ideas continued on the website. So I want to finish this presentation with a few reflections on the Metro Futures project. And I'll start with looking at how the findings that came from our strand of the public consultation in many ways complemented the other 2 parts of the public consultation. Nexus were pleased because some of our findings triangulated and confirmed other parts of the Nexus and the Transport Focus strands, but they also were useful in terms of adding experiential detail to those findings and also exploring future ideas. We also, in the way that we presented our findings, tried to resist presenting a simple, simplified answer, a simple consensus of opinions, and maintain the multiple perspectives and the multiple viewpoints that have been shared. So, for example, the Nexus and Transport Focus findings present a very clear preference for a linear seating pattern in trains, Nexus having offered 3 options in their questionnaire. But when we talked about it with our co-researchers and members of the public, the picture was a bit more complicated. A linear seating layout is appropriate if you're making a short journey, a busy time of day, when you want to get as many people on the train as possible. However, if you're travelling from one end of the network to the other, perhaps with luggage, that's probably a very uncomfortable option, and a different layout would be more appropriate with more space for luggage. We came up with some practical learning from doing experience-centred co-design at scale in Metro Futures. The media recording of experiences were effective, but you need those ways in. You need those headline videos, you need those keywords, so that when you're having those kind of interactions at Pop-Up Labs or on the website, which typically are shorter, you can provide a way into that quite rich and large data set. I think we would have started those broader public activities a bit later on than the co-design workshops, because then we can use the results of those co-design workshops in those broader engagements. And I think we would have made earlier and greater use of speculative design proposals if we were to do this again. So our approach in Metro Futures was valuable to Nexus, but it was also novel. And it's worth saying that it was in the early part of the process. It was at this fuzzy front end of design when Nexus were in the process of getting the funds and getting the permission to start to go and seek a train manufacturer to produce the new trains. And the question now is how to maintain that experience focus and that idea of members of the public as co-designers, which is a novel aspect for Nexus, in this ongoing process of procuring the trains. Well, there's 2 options, there's 2 insights we offer in the paper in this respect. One is about keeping those passengers' experience, those people's experiences and ideas alive in this process. So in Metro Futures, for example, we were clear that one of the outputs that we wanted to produce and did produce was a video documentary, which we then put on YouTube, which used the co-researchers' explanations of their findings and their ideas as a way of communicating our findings. And it was useful to have this as a very visible reminder in the public domain of passengers' experience of the Metro and their desires for the future Metro, which is also there in a way to hold Nexus accountable in the future stages of the process. The other thing that we're suggesting is that to resist this kind of averaging out of concerns and ideas in the ongoing process, and to see some of the design ideas that have come out, some of the experiences that have come out as a means of inspiring ongoing design work. So combining aspects of different experience-centred concerns and design proposals rather than trying to combine entire concerns or proposals according to their popularity. So thank you for watching. Please see the paper and the video figure for more details on the project and the Open Lab website for updates on this ongoing work.